What if I told you that the most toxic person in your life has been studying you longer than you've been studying them? Carl Jung once said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But here's what Jung didn't tell you in that quote: toxic people have weaponized this very principle against you. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll never look at manipulation the same way again. And more importantly, you'll finally understand why some people seem to have an almost supernatural ability to get under your skin. But first, let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. Have you ever noticed how certain people can walk into a room and immediately change the entire energy? How they seem to know exactly what to say to make you question your own reality. How they can make you feel crazy, small, or completely drained after just minutes of interaction. What you're experiencing isn't magic. It's not coincidence. It's psychological warfare based on techniques that Carl Jung himself documented over a century ago. Have you ever wondered why certain people can make you feel completely drained after just 5 minutes of conversation? Or why some individuals seem to know exactly which buttons to press to send you into an emotional spiral? According to Carl Jung's groundbreaking research into the human psyche, there's a dark science behind this phenomenon. Jung discovered that what he called the shadow self, the hidden, repressed parts of our personality, could be exploited by those who understand human psychology. Carl Jung warned us that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But what he discovered through decades of clinical practice was even more disturbing. Some people exploit our incomplete self-acceptance as a weapon against us. Jung spent his entire career studying the darkest aspects of human psychology. He worked with patients who had experienced the most extreme forms of psychological manipulation. He documented patterns of behavior that most therapists were too afraid to discuss publicly. I'm going to share 5 secrets that toxic people desperately hope you never discover. Each one more shocking than the last. And if you stick around until the end, I'll reveal the one defense mechanism that Carl Jung himself used to protect against psychological manipulation, a technique so powerful that it can neutralize even the most sophisticated manipulator instantly. But before we dive into these secrets, I need to warn you, once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them. Once you understand how this psychological chess game works, you'll start recognizing it everywhere, in your workplace, your family, your relationships, even in yourself. Are you ready for that level of awareness? Because there's no going back once you open this door. Secret 1. They study your emotional patterns like a scientist. Here's something that will send chills down your spine. Carl Jung discovered through his analytical psychology that every person has predictable emotional patterns, what he called complex constellations. These are automatic emotional responses triggered by specific situations, words, or behaviors. But here's what Jung couldn't have predicted: toxic people have turned this discovery into their primary weapon. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how a toxic person seems to know exactly what to say to make you doubt yourself? It's not coincidence. It's not luck. It's systematic emotional mapping. Here's exactly how they do it. Phase 1, the information gathering. They ask seemingly innocent questions about your past, your fears, your dreams. They want to know about your relationship with your parents, your biggest failures, your deepest insecurities. They disguise this as getting to know you better, or being a good friend. Phase 2, the testing. Once they have basic information, they start testing your emotional triggers. They'll make subtle comments or create small situations designed to provoke specific emotional responses. They're calibrating their understanding of your psychological makeup. Phase 3, the mapping. After sufficient testing, they create what Jung would have called a psychological map of your complex system. They know that mentioning your weight makes you self-conscious, that questioning your intelligence makes you defensive, that bringing up your ex makes you anxious. Carl Jung said, your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. Toxic people have perverted this wisdom. Instead of looking inside themselves, they're looking inside you, mapping your emotional landscape like a predator studying prey. And once they have this map, they know that mentioning your mother in a certain tone will make you defensive. They know that questioning your competence at work will send you spiraling. They know that bringing up your past failures will make you overcompensate by trying to prove yourself. Jung discovered that when our complexes are triggered, we literally lose access to our rational thinking. The emotional charge of the complex overwhelms our conscious mind, and we react from a place of unconscious programming rather than conscious choice. That wasn't weakness. That wasn't you being too emotional. That was your complexes being deliberately triggered by someone who had studied your emotional patterns. Secret 2, they create artificial emotional highs to hook you. This next secret is so disturbing, it was banned from being taught in certain psychology programs. Carl Jung discovered something he called the enantiodromia, the tendency for things to turn into their opposite when pushed to extremes. According to Jung, this principle governs much of human behavior and emotional experience. Toxic people have mastered this psychological principle to create what Jung would have called artificial transcendence. Here's the exact process they use. Stage 1, the baseline establishment. First, they establish themselves as a source of positive feelings. They love bomb you with attention, validation, and affection. They make you feel special, chosen, understood in ways you've never experienced before. Stage 2, the gradual withdrawal. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, they begin withdrawing this positive energy. They become less available, less enthusiastic, more critical. They create doubt about your worth and your place in their life. Stage 3, the emotional low. They push you into a state of emotional desperation. They ignore you, criticize you, or emotionally abuse you until you're at your breaking point. Your nervous system is flooded with stress hormones, your self-esteem is shattered, and you're desperate for relief. Stage 4, the artificial high. Just when you're about to give up, just when you're ready to walk away forever, they shower you with the exact kind of attention and validation you've been craving. But now, because of the extreme low you just experienced, this normal level of kindness feels absolutely euphoric. Carl Jung discovered something that modern neuroscience has confirmed: extreme emotional experiences create stronger neural pathways than moderate ones. When someone takes you to emotional hell and then rescues you, your brain creates powerful associations between that person and relief, safety, and love. That rush of relief you feel. That overwhelming gratitude when they're finally nice to you again. That's not love. That's trauma bonding disguised as connection. According to Carl Jung, the most powerful weapon in the world is the human soul on fire. Toxic people have learned to set your soul on fire, and then position themselves as both the arsonist and the firefighter. Eventually, you start to believe that the intense emotions you feel with them, both the highs and the lows, are evidence of a deep, meaningful connection. You mistake intensity for intimacy, chaos for passion, and trauma bonding for love. Secret 3, they target people with unhealed psychological wounds. What I'm about to tell you might be the hardest truth you'll ever hear about yourself. Carl Jung discovered that we all carry what he called unlived life, the parts of ourselves we've suppressed, denied, or never fully integrated. According to Jung, these unhealed aspects of our psyche emit an almost magnetic signal to certain types of people. Toxic people are psychological vampires who can sense emotional wounds from miles away. Here's exactly how toxic people detect your wounds. Method 1, the boundary test. They test your boundaries in small ways first. Do you say yes when you mean no? Do you apologize for things that aren't your fault? Do you sacrifice your needs to avoid conflict? These behaviors signal unhealed wounds around self-worth and abandonment. Method 2, the trauma response scan. They watch how you react to stress, criticism, or emotional intensity. Do you freeze up? Do you people please? Do you become aggressive? Your trauma responses tell them exactly which wounds to target. Method 3, the story extraction. They get you talking about your past, your family, your previous relationships. They're listening for patterns of pain, unresolved conflicts, and unhealed traumas. Every story you tell gives them ammunition. Method 4, the empathy hijack. They present themselves as wounded in the exact ways that your wounds make you susceptible to. If you were neglected, they'll share stories of being neglected. If you were criticized, they'll talk about being criticized. They mirror your pain to create a false sense of connection. Carl Jung identified several common psychological wounds that toxic people consistently exploit. 1. The abandonment wound. If you were abandoned as a child, they'll detect your fear of abandonment and use intermittent reinforcement to keep you hooked. 2. The criticism wound. If you were harshly criticized growing up, they'll alternate between excessive praise and subtle put-downs. 3. The invisibility wound. If you were made to feel invisible or unimportant, they'll love-bomb you with attention before gradually withdrawing it. 4. The perfectionism wound. If you learned that love was conditional on performance, they'll set impossible standards and move the goalposts constantly. Once they've identified your core wounds, they create situations designed to trigger them repeatedly. They don't heal your wounds, they keep them fresh and bleeding so they can continue to exploit them. Carl Jung said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Toxic people inadvertently shine a spotlight on the exact places where you need to focus your healing work. Secret 4, they project their shadow self onto you. This fourth secret is so profound, it will literally flip your understanding of toxic behavior upside down. Carl Jung discovered one of the most important concepts in all of psychology, the shadow. According to Jung, the shadow represents the hidden, repressed, and disowned parts of our personality. Jung said, everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. But here's what Jung discovered that changes everything. Toxic people don't just carry a shadow, they actively project it onto everyone around them, especially their victims. Carl Jung defined projection as an unconscious, automatic process whereby a person attributes to another person, animal or object the qualities, feelings, beliefs or intentions which originate in himself. But toxic people weaponize this natural psychological process. When a toxic person accuses you of being selfish, manipulative, or cruel, they're not describing you. They're describing themselves. Carl Jung called this projection, and he discovered it's one of the most powerful psychological defense mechanisms. According to Carl Jung's research, projection serves multiple psychological functions for toxic individuals. Function 1, shadow disposal. They get rid of the parts of themselves they can't accept by forcing you to carry them. Function 2, moral superiority. By projecting their negative traits onto you, they maintain their sense of being good while making you the bad person. Function 3, reality distortion. Projection creates confusion and self-doubt in their victims. Function 4, responsibility avoidance. If all the problems in the relationship are your fault, they never have to take responsibility for their own behavior. According to Carl Jung, healthy individuals gradually integrate their shadow over time through self-awareness and personal growth. But toxic people have found a different solution: they make other people carry their shadow for them. The most sophisticated toxic people don't just project their obvious negative traits. They project their more subtle shadow aspects. 1. Projected weakness. They accuse you of being weak, needy, or dependent while they're the ones who can't function without constant attention and validation. 2. Projected jealousy. They accuse you of being jealous of others while they're consumed with envy and competition. 3. Projected emptiness. They accuse you of being boring or having no personality while they have no authentic sense of self. But once you understand this mechanism, something miraculous happens. Every accusation they make becomes a confession. Every criticism they level at you becomes a window into their own psyche. Jung discovered that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Toxic people are terrified of accepting their own shadow, so they force you to carry it instead. But when you stop accepting their projections, they're forced to confront their own darkness. Secret 5. They convince you to betray your own intuition. This final secret is the master key that unlocks all toxic behavior. Once you understand this, you'll never be vulnerable to psychological manipulation again. Carl Jung discovered something he considered one of the most important aspects of human psychology: the role of intuition in psychological health and protection. Jung said, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." Toxic people's ultimate goal isn't to hurt you, control you, or even manipulate you. Their ultimate goal is to make you stop trusting yourself. According to Carl Jung, people with strong intuitive connections are nearly impossible to manipulate long-term. They can sense insincerity, detect hidden agendas, and recognize toxic patterns before they become fully established. So toxic people develop sophisticated strategies to sever your connection to your own intuition. Here's exactly how they do it. Method 1. Gaslighting your perceptions. When you feel something is wrong, they convince you you're too sensitive. When you notice inconsistencies in their behavior, they tell you you're overthinking. When you pick up on their hidden agendas, they say you're imagining things. Method 2. Creating false urgency. Jung discovered that intuition requires time and space to emerge. Toxic people create artificial crises that force you to make quick decisions without consulting your inner wisdom. Method 3. Rewarding self-betrayal. They create a system where you're rewarded for ignoring your intuition and punished for following it. Every time you trust your gut about them, they make you pay through guilt, anger, or withdrawal. Method 4. Substituting their reality for yours. They position themselves as the authority on what's really happening. They convince you that their perceptions are more accurate than yours. Carl Jung warned that the most damaging phrase in the language is, "It has always been done that way." Toxic people convince you that you're normal, healthy responses are abnormal. They make you believe that setting boundaries is selfish, trusting your feelings is weak, and protecting yourself is mean. Carl Jung discovered that our intuition typically tries to warn us about toxic people very early in the relationship. The signs include feeling drained after spending time with them, sensing that they're performing rather than being authentic, and experiencing a vague sense of unease that you can't explain. According to Carl Jung's clinical observations, people who have been systematically taught to distrust their intuition often experience chronic anxiety and self-doubt, difficulty making decisions, and a sense of being lost or disconnected from themselves. Remember at the beginning when I promised to share Carl Jung's personal defense against psychological manipulation? Here it is, and it's more powerful than anything you can imagine. Carl Jung discovered a technique he called active imagination, but he used it in a way that most people never learn about. Whenever Jung encountered someone who seemed to be trying to manipulate or control him, he would internally step back and observe the interaction as if he were studying a psychological case. Here's exactly how Jung's method works. Step 1. The mental step back. The moment you sense manipulation, imagine taking a literal step backward in your mind. Visualize yourself moving from being in the interaction to observing it from a slight distance. Step 2. The scientist mode. Ask yourself these questions that Jung used. What psychological need is driving this person's behavior? What am I being asked to feel, and why? What would happen if I refuse to play this psychological role? How are they trying to make me carry their emotional burden? Step 3. The energy shield. Jung discovered that manipulation requires your emotional participation. When you become the observer rather than the participant, you create what he called psychological immunity. Step 4. The response choice. From this observational stance, consciously choose your response rather than reacting automatically. Jung said, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. This technique, which Jung called psychological objectivity, created an invisible shield around him. It's impossible to manipulate someone who is consciously observing the manipulation attempt in real time. Here's how to use Jung's defense method in your daily life. 1. With the guilt tripper. Instead of feeling guilty, observe, they're trying to make me responsible for their emotions. What would happen if I refuse to carry their emotional burden? 2. With the gaslighter, instead of doubting yourself, observe, they're trying to make me question my perceptions. What would happen if I trusted my own reality? 3. With the victim player, instead of rescuing them, observe, they're trying to make me responsible for their problems. How are they avoiding taking responsibility for their own life? Carl Jung said, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. Today, you have a choice. You can continue allowing toxic people to exploit these psychological vulnerabilities, or you can use Jung's wisdom to reclaim your power. Let's review the 5 secrets that toxic people don't want you to know. Secret 1. They study your emotional patterns like scientists, mapping your psychological vulnerabilities to use against you. Secret 2. They create artificial emotional highs through manufactured lows, making you addicted to their validation through trauma bonding. Secret 3. They target people with unhealed psychological wounds, using your unintegrated pain as weapons against you. Secret 4. They project their shadow self onto you, making you carry their darkness while they maintain their false image of goodness. Secret 5. They convince you to betray your own intuition, severing your connection to your internal guidance system. Carl Jung promised that individuals who develop psychological awareness become immune to manipulation. He wrote, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and when you do, when you trust your perceptions, honor your boundaries, and listen to your intuition, toxic people lose their power over you. Your homework is simple but powerful. For the next week, practice Jung's active imagination technique with every person who tries to manipulate your emotions. Watch how quickly your relationships transform when you refuse to play your assigned role in their psychological drama. Every time someone tries to guilt you, gaslight you, or emotionally manipulate you, step back into the observing ego and ask, what are they trying to make me feel, and why? What would happen if I refused to feel it? As Carl Jung discovered through decades of research, your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. It's time to wake up. It's time to look inside. It's time to trust yourself. It's time to reclaim your psychological sovereignty. You can continue playing the role they've assigned you in their psychological drama, or you can step into the role that Carl Jung knew you were meant for, the conscious observer, the integrated individual, the person who cannot be manipulated because they know themselves too well. According to Carl Jung, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Toxic people will try to convince you to become who they need you to be. But now you know better. The journey to psychological freedom begins with a single step: refusing to participate in your own manipulation. Take that step today. Your future self will thank you. Jung was right, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But he also discovered something even more powerful: everything we understand about ourselves makes us immune to those who would exploit us. You now have that understanding. You now have that immunity. You now have that power. Use it wisely. Thank you so much for staying with me through this exploration. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might benefit from it. And if you'd like to go a step further in supporting this work, you can now leave a super thanks below. It's a small way to say thank you, and it truly helps keep this channel going.